Cleon, we were talking before about Taco Bell. Have you ever had Taco Bell?
Never had Taco Bell. It's kind of one of those things that Australians know about purely because of American television. So it's in our lexicon. And we do have a few Taco Bell shops here, but it's not like as ubiquitous as it is in the US or everywhere else.
You are not missing anything, by the way. We're just,
Oh, I don't know. There's the Mexican pizza.
oh,
Yeah.
good Lord. They have what the crunch wrap with a big cheese it in the middle of it? Really?
Yeah. They're not that bad.
And you know what? The guys on Michelin, the rating system, are like, you just missed a Michelin star with that one, just by a
Just
hair.
barely.
Chuck loves Mexican food so much that he's like, Taco Bell ain't too bad. That's pretty messed up.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that different from what you make at home. It's like tortilla, some beans, you know.
I don't know, man. We got to work on your culinary skills if it's not very far from what you make at home.
Well, it's very far from what I make, but just generally.
That's good. That
Chuck
makes
uses
me feel
10
better.
times more chilies, doesn't he?
Absolutely, yes.
He probably does.
So guys, I have a housekeeping.
Hey, Justin, you're a bit quiet.
Hello. Is this better?
I reckon we can work with that, right? Like that's fine.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we're deciding what Roy can work with. I love it. Yeah, I reckon that fundamentally we don't have to work with that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roy.
Sorry, Roy.
You guys ready to jump in?
Yeah.
All right. Here comes Dramface podcast number 6. We're going to do it in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome again, everyone, all you Dramfacers out there. Welcome to the Colonials Dramface podcast number 6. Crazy to think that it's 6 already. We are here this evening / this morning, depending on where on the globe you are. And I'm looking at my screen with 4 wonderful mates and a new one among the 4, but we'll get to that in a second. We've got Chuck, Mike, Cleon, as you might remember, and our newest colonial, Justin. Howdy, Justin.
Hello. Good morning from. I'll just say it. Good morning from Hong Kong.
You're like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say it.
Yeah, might as well say it out loud.
Just say you're from Hoboken, New Jersey. You're fine. Welcome aboard, Justin.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on the podcast. And we have Chuck. How are you doing?
Never better.
Excellent. Cleon?
Yeah, thanks.
Howdy. It is a torrential downpour here in Melbourne after a few days of high 30s, 30-degree scorches. So it is perfect whiskey drinking weather for my dear friends and I for the podcast. So I'm into it today. Really, really into it.
Sweet. Although I can't ever remember a time, Cleon, when you have not been into it. Look, I don't want to point it out, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
Anytime is whiskey time.
That's it.
He's a feisty bugger.
Yeah.
And we love it. Speaking of feisty buggers, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing more than adequately well, thank you, Rob. Yeah. All is good in New York City.
In the Big Apple. Well, we have reconvened here with a topic in mind to start with. And as one of the things that we have talked about amongst ourselves before the podcast started, we look at Dramface and obviously we love it. But oftentimes we wind up chasing things that are the just out of reach or the things that are so either new and shiny and this and that. We oftentimes wonder, are we missing something under our feet? And there was a great review this past week by Fergus. And by the time this gets out, it's going to be a little while. But go back and reread Fergus's review of the Dalwhinnie 15. So kind of got us thinking, you know, in our ongoing search for newer and interesting and unique, or even specifically IBs, what do we overlook? What are the forgotten or overlooked expressions that are on the shelves, but we just walk past, that are still good, solid propositions, whether value and or taste. So we've had this discussion back and forth, and I throw it out to you guys. Just as before we get into the bottles, when you were doing this, was it an easy exercise or was it something that really took some time?
I actually forgot I had these whiskies. So in terms of being, overlooked, they were quite literally overlooked. I don't think I've cracked into them for at least over a year. And I think they fit the bill. Though I only realized 5 minutes into before recording that we were meant to be 50% or below. So I had to go back and find another one that was under 50%.
I have one that's north of 60, but we'll come back. We'll come to that. We'll come to that.
Well, so let me get some context with this. Cleon. Now we've talked about this kind of tangentially in the past. I've talked about my whiskey cabinet, which holds no more than 40. It's, always under 40. You, as I recall, Cleon, from a chat we had some long time ago, you'd be like, well, I got to order another shelf from IKEA. And then I'm taking over this particular closet in the house. What does the Cleon collection look like as if we were to walk into your house? Where would we find it, and what does it look like?
Wherever my wife can't find it, which is becoming increasingly more difficult to procure. Initially, there was an IKEA cabinet that stored most of it. That is long filled. Then it was a linen cupboard, and now it's the guest cupboard. So there are pockets of shelving and or random plastic bucket space in which bottles live, which does make obtaining whiskeys really difficult because I can't exactly remember where they are. So I'm kind of the opposite of what Stu has, where he has the Excel spreadsheet and they're all organized by distillery. Mine is just pirates would go insane trying to find the treasure here because it is any and anywhere with no particular pattern. But yeah, it is more and more overflowing. So the goal is to try maybe in the next 6 months get some cabinetry built into a little nook that we have in our house, so I can finally just give it all one succinct home.
Yeah, I would think that the first goal, and this is just a suggestion, and a friendly one at that.
Let's see how friendly it is.
Go to your sweet wife and say, I love you, dear. Let me show you the wonders of, say, single malt, and get her on board, and then there's no problem.
Tried many times and failed. I can't even drink whiskey next to her because she despises the sounds that come out of my mouth. And I'm not even as bad as our old mate Horst on YouTube. Like, I'm just lovely sort of tasting. Like, in my mind, if I'm like, this is good, she's like, you're too loud, Cleon. The sounds that you're making mentally over that Bunnahaven is way too loud.
Not actually the whiskey she dislikes then.
Probably the effect that it has, hey?
Yeah, well. So, Justin, if we were to walk into your place, what does the Justin stash look like and where is it stored? Or how many are we talking about?
So I've got one cabinet, which is restricted by my wife. And she says all of the whiskey has to fit in this cabinet.
And how much does the cabinet hold?
I don't know how much the cabinet holds, but that's not all of my collection. some of what I have is at my parents' place. So a bit like Gregor McCree. I don't have everything here. So, but I do have a spreadsheet, so I do know exactly how many bottles I have, which I'm not prepared to share.
I don't know, Mike. Another spreadsheet person. Somewhere, Stu in Calgary just had his ears perk up, and he just got a little smile on his face, and I'll leave it at that.
You've also posted to the spreadsheet.
So, if we were to look at the Justin spreadsheet, the ballpark number that's in this one quote unquote cabinet in your house / I've invaded my parents, what does that number look like?
Do you want me to say? Do you need me to say?
He doesn't want to say.
We want you to dish, buddy. We want you to dish.
This is when they say spill the tea.
It's in the order of 150. Let's just put it at that.
Well done.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Stu was at what, 188 or something like that? The last call he was trying to pare down.
I think
So, yeah.
Mike
Well, I
takes
just-
the cake for us here, Mike, because your one is very substantial from memory.
He's just grinning like the Cheshire Cat.
No, I'm trying to hide behind the microphone at this point. Mine is a little larger than that. Yeah. I do not have a spreadsheet. I did actually once try to initiate a spreadsheet. I thought I need to catalog, and I'll start with my odd Namerkans.
He never got out of the A's.
I didn't. I couldn't keep up. It was unfortunate. Partly because look, I'm not a spreadsheet person in any aspect of my life. This isn't a comment on the whiskey thing at all. And that's, of course, when I do it, I start thinking, okay, I want to log this, and I want to log that, and I want to log that, the ABV, and all this, and the finish, and all that. And there's just too much information. And I guess if I stayed on top of it, like Stu undoubtedly does, then how much information you add per bottle is not going to be the issue, because there's not that much for a bottle if you're adding one bottle at a time or two bottles when you buy them. But I was never going to be able to play catch up, so that's my issue. So yes, I have a few more than Justin. I'm probably going to slow down the rate at which the collection is growing. I say probably not because I know that I shouldn't, but because I'm not very good at that sort of
Right.
thing.
I believe I said that about a year ago.
You have a place in an apartment in New York City, correct?
Yeah.
So if we were to walk into this apartment, you don't have a spice cabinet. There are no places for dishes. It's just bottles everywhere.
It's just whiskey.
Yeah, I actually sleep on a bed of bottles. Actually.
Well done.
No.
Surely, like the mayor of New York keeps Mike's apartment as a fire hazard to the city, considering how much alcohol is within that space.
The springs under the mattress, right? You replace them with bottles. That's
There
how
you
it
go.
works.
There we go. No, actually, to be honest, if you walk in, it's a nice roomy apartment. There's plenty of space. I've got a cabinet, not an overly large cabinet. I used to have a much bigger cabinet, but there's plenty of bottles in there. And then I've got some shelving, and I do have one small stash of either duplicates or stuff that I don't expect to be getting to for a long time, which is in another cupboard somewhere. But you walk in and you don't necessarily get struck by, oh my God, this place is full of bottles. But it's surprising just how many there actually are.
I love that. It's in a cabinet somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know people that have whole whiskey rooms with
of course.
probably a couple of thousand bottles.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we can all feel like we're just getting started if we want to.
Well, yeah, when we built our house, Mike, we built a 4-bedroom, and the plan was always that the 4th bedroom would be the whiskey room. But looking at all the Play-Doh and the crayons and kid stuff, there was no chance in hell that it was ever gonna become Cleon's old whiskey bothy.
If you let your kids play with your whiskey, you could get over that problem.
That's a fair point. That's a very fair point. So, Chuck, if
Yeah.
we were to walk into Chuck's abode, what is the whiskey stash? How much? Where is it? Is it in other family members'
No,
residences?
mine's a bit like yours. I keep one cabinet,
Mhm.
and it's it's not the biggest cabinet. It's got probably enough. I think I've got probably like 20 bottles right now. So it's a very specific collection, and I'm basically at capacity. So if I'm gonna buy anything else, I'm gonna have to cull the herd a little bit. Thankfully, I've got a couple that are prime. There's one pour left in each, maybe. So I've got pretty soon I'm gonna have room to grow.
Is this all in the whiskey? What was it called? The whiskey workshop?
So that's where I'll do the tasting and things like that. The storage is actually in the bar. I've got a regular bar.
Got it.
Hey, Chuck, I just want to piggyback of that a little bit, right? Because I think what you described, it's some of us, we tend to keep whiskeys on life support. Just that there's probably like 1 or 2 pours left, and it's just been there for months, and we just can't bear to part of it. What bottle do each of you have that you're just keeping on life support that really we should have sent into whiskey heaven a long, long time ago?
Very good question.
Yeah,
I've got to open my spreadsheet now.
that's easy for me to say.
Justin, on your spread, I got to open my spreadsheet. He says,
Yeah.
"Do you have like a little thing under like the volume that's still left?"
I don't, but at least I know what bottles I have to consider.
I'll start off with that, Cleon. I have, and I've been nursing, and I can't bring myself to drain. I have a Ben Riach cask number 2, which I bought actually in July. It is the best bottle that I have purchased this year. After I came back from my flight to Barcelona, my son drove me to a liquor store, which is great. And I found that Dusty, and it literally is maybe a finger, maybe 2 fingers left at the bottom. And I can't. I pick it up and I'm like, can't do it. Can't do it.
Must have been bloody good that you've gotten to that level in under 6 months. That's a phenomenal.
Yeah, I would love to say I shared it a lot.
But no.
The missus and I did some serious damage to it, so that's on us. But that's where it is. You have one, Justin?
So looking at the spreadsheet, I don't.
When we get you on a podcast with Stu, oh my God, this is gonna be like synergy like nothing else.
They're just highlighted in red. The ones that are on live support. It's like I've palliated this, and this whiskey.
Yeah.
So there isn't one whiskey where it's down to the heels or whatever, but there's one whiskey that I'm nursing like a baby, and that is the Ardbeg Dark Cove. I think
Nice.
I think I have a third of it left now. I'm nursing that.
Oh, just a long forgotten not long forgotten, but a long gone era of Ardbeg committee releases that were actually good.
Yeah,
exactly. Where did you get that?
I got it. I got it from a local specialist shop.
Recently, or a year ago, 2 years?
2 years maybe.
Yeah.
Whoa! Wait, you were able to get one for? Was it like close to retail price, Justin, or was it like crazy secondary prices?
Nope, crazy secondary prices. Well, not crazy, but secondary prices. Definitely secondary prices.
We all winced a bit for you.
Right.
Mike.
I got a bunch that I kind of do this with. You know, when if you find a really, really good whiskey, you know it's really, really good by the time you get down to the top of the label. And then I find, if it's the only one you've got and you don't know how the heck you're ever going to get another one, at that point you start getting a little bit anxious. And as you go further down the bottle, you know, it amplifies. And as soon as you clear the bottom of the bottle, you're in a very bad state at that point, and you really need to. Funny, the first thing that ever happened, I remember that happening with, was actually the Glenmorangie Atlanta, which is one of the whiskeys that kind of sent me down the rabbit hole. It was a really interesting whiskey. I would say there's a handful I'm doing that with now. One is the Kilkerran 8-year-old cask strength 2021 release, fully matured in sherry, and it has that wonderful kind of, yes, there's a sweetness in there, but it's also got that savory, oily, resinous, dirty thing going on, which I absolutely love. And you can still pick those up at auction, but you got to find them, and you've got to be prepared to pay for them. And of course, it mostly means shipping them over from the UK, so it's not a trivial undertaking. I've also got a really, really good Colonials bottling of a 24-year-old Dalyuen, which I picked up at auction. It's one of those ones that gets overlooked. And it didn't actually say on it that it was 24 years old on the listing. It was a curious listing. And I got that, and it's a really, really good whiskey. And I'm about halfway down, and I mean, I've actually hidden it away at the back of the shelf. I don't want to see it too easily, you know?
Yeah.
I want to backtrack. I've got another bottle.
He's in the spreadsheet.
As he scans the spreadsheet.
He found the hidden tabs.
I've got a Cadenhead's Linkwood, 28 years old. That's what I'm nursing.
Oh,
that is what I'm nursing.
Right.
It's funny because I had that bottle. I went through about half of it, and then I looked it up on Whiskey Base, and I realized it was an Oloroso sherry, but I thought it was a bourbon cask.
I will say that's the dangerous thing about a spreadsheet. It's really easy to check out what you've got I can kind of forget
Yeah.
something. If I'm hosting a tasting, I'd go to my spreadsheet and I'm sure I would go, oh, yeah, I should get that one out, and then it's gone.
No, but
Yeah.
the good thing about this spreadsheet is that there are things that you forgot about, right?
Yeah.
And when you pour a whiskey, you always start with what's accessible to you on the shelf.
Mhm.
So sometimes for me, I just go to the spreadsheet, I hit random, and whatever's on the top, I just drink that. So there are bottles where I've forgotten, and you know what? No, I can try that again.
That is a really good form of whiskey roulette there, Justin. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if you have 150 bottles in the ballpark of,
yeah.
and all you do is take the ones in the front,
Yeah.
you'll never.
So,
I mean,
yeah, I'll never get past half of them.
hmm.
So there would have been bottles that have been sitting there for years. Whereas if I'm doing that roulette thing,
The Justin Dunnage warehouse.
Yeah.
yeah,
That actually is one of the fun things about doing the tastings, because then you're curating an evening and you're saying, okay, where are we going to go this evening? What's
Yeah.
an
Right.
interesting combination?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
One
Yeah.
night
Yeah.
I've done like all Campbelltown, or you deliberately mix it way up.
Yeah.
yeah.
Or somebody will bring one and you say, oh, okay, that completely messes up. So they brought that. What should I go with that? And it's a fun thing to do, and it makes you rummage in the back of the cupboard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
definitely.
Chuck, is there a
I've got
bottle that you're nursing?
I've got two that are absolutely just one pour left.
Mm.
And one's the Craig Ellachie Bass Armagnac,
Oh,
13-year-old.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Mhm.
And that's why it's not killed yet, because it's like, it's not one I'm likely to replace, because I don't love it enough to, throw another like $65 at it or whatever it is at it. There's
True.
plenty of other $65 whiskeys that would be as good or better,
Mhm.
but it's a good one. And then the other one is Brookladdy Local Barley, I think it is, or the 2013.
You have the 2013.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've seen the bear barley?
Not the bear
I
barley. no.
love barley. I
Barley,
love barley.
I love
Ah,
barley.
okay.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, each of those are like nice ones. You don't want to just cash out, but there's nothing left. It's just time. I brought it out to do it the other day and actually put it back. I couldn't do it.
That's exactly what Cleon was talking about. So,
Yeah.
with this exercise of what's under our feet that we just we've always overlooked or walked past, listening to what you guys have to say with your respective collections and me with mine, there are some bottles that clearly, like Cleon said, I haven't seen this in years. So you brought a couple or one or two or three bottles with you. What are the ones that surprised you the most that you're like, you know what? I haven't looked at this, and you know what? It's actually a pretty solid bottle. We just keep looking past it.
I'll go first. I've got something that unfortunately doesn't meet the 50% thing that we discussed, but it's honestly one of the only OBs that I have that kind of fits the bill. And it's this. It's the Glen Grant 15.
Mm-hmm.
And it does come in as batch strength. And I don't really drink. Yeah, I don't drink much Glen Grant in general, but this stuff is just freshly cut apples galore. It is delicious.
Nice.
Ralphie did
So how
not
long
like
have you
I
had
remember.
that one?
I've probably had it like over 3 years, Rob, because this was back in the day when I used to do those whiskey subscriptions, and this was the only bottle out of the 5 that I got that was close to drinkable and enjoyable. Like everything else, I really didn't vibe with me. But this one, even though I've kind of forgotten about it, is one where I'm like, I just opened it last night when I was preparing for the pod, and I gave it a sniff, and I'm like, oh, where has this been all year? It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and it kind of is the style of whiskey that I don't drink as often as I want to, which is classic ex-bourbon, orchard fruit, flowers, just gorgeous stuff.
Yeah, Glen Grant 15 is a really nicely put together whiskey. I think it has a really nice peppery note in there as well, which accents the fruit beautifully. Glen Grant's good. It's very reliable.
How would you compare it, Cleon, to a Glen Murray?
I think exactly what Mike said, in that it's much spicier than a Glen Murray. I find, although a Glenmurray isn't waxy, I do think it has a bit more of a solid texture rather than spice in the tongue. And even though they both kind of go for those orchard fruits, I think Glenmurray, especially over age, can get a little bit tropical. The younger ones are probably have more of that sort of biscuity sort of flavors in there as well. I probably would prefer a Glenmurray over a Glen Grant, but at the moment, I'm really bloody enjoying this.
Good.
Nice.
Mike, what's one that you went back and you said, you know what? Here's a bottle that's either forgotten or overlooked.
Yeah, this is a challenging exercise. And I suspect all of us can recognize this. I've realized that I've kind of like wandered into the world of independent bottlings or limited editions, unusual distillery, less well-known distilleries, old whiskies, all that kind of stuff. Way more than I thought. I mean, I've got an Octomore 18 kicking around on the back of the cupboard. I didn't choose that for this. I've got a couple, one of which I had to go out and buy, actually. But this one was in the collection, and it's interesting because it's a Glen Scotia, but it's a Glen. I mean, you'd never say that Glen Scotia as a distillery was overlooked.
Right.
Well, I'll come back to that. Certainly not overlooked in my collection. I've got loads of Glen Scotia, but it's a combo of some of the older releases, the distillery exclusives, IBs, lots of them because it's really good. But the one I've chosen for this, weighing in at 46% ABV, so just about within
Perfect.
the limit, is the double cask. And I think the double cask within the range, in relative terms, gets kind of overlooked. A lot of people talk about the 15, which is a great whiskey. Everybody talks about the Victoriana, which is consistently magnificent. The 18 is good.
Woo. Nice.
Have you ever had a remotely uninteresting, less than really, really good Victoriana? Probably not.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe it's because it's like the entry point, and it's the none of non-age statement and so on. I kind of feel the double cask gets a little bit overlooked. Certainly where we are. I mean, in the UK, this is probably a different scenario. It's harder to find. It's always good value, but it's a really good whiskey. It's got a lot of fruit going on. It's got some of that salinity. There's a nice warmth to it. I kind of hesitate to use the word heat, but there is a warmth to the finish. There's pepper on it. To me, it doesn't drink at 46, or if it does, it's really characterful 46. I would place this as being 2, 3, 4 points higher. And then the other thing I would say about Glen Scotia is you can always say that actually Glen Scotia is kind of overlooked for a Campbelltown distillery. And admittedly, it's got some neighbours with some big kahunas and a hell of a lot of attention. But for a lot of people who are into the Springbanks and the Kilkerrans and so forth, it is that it does kind of fly a little bit under the radar. And that might be good because it gives them a bit more space to play.
Right.
But not justifiably so. Glen Scotia is a magnificent distillery, which I think is relatively overlooked because of where it is. And I would say of those, the double cask probably qualifies for our kind of criteria right now. And I'm actually finishing this bottle tonight. We're massacring this one. We're murdering this bottle tonight.
No life support for this one. It's going straight into
there's a DNA on this one. Oh, DNL rather. Sorry, DNL. And I mean, I've had this probably 3 years.
Wow.
And there's no sign that it's been kicking around for too long at all. And when I selected this for tonight, I actually popped out to buy another one because I don't want to be without it.
That's a good call on that expression. I've had one years ago, and I even before I moved down here, I couldn't find it again. But that's a solid bottle. Yeah, that's something.
But Mike, which one is that? Is that the rum cask or is that the PX cask?
This actually is the PX. Yeah, It says American oak and PX sherry cask
or something. Yeah, I think I've got that kicking about as well. Yeah,
rich and spicy, it says on the label, and I think that's a nice little summary. It's interesting what you're saying, Rob, about not being able to find it, because I was chatting with the guys where I bought it, Park Avenue Liquors in here in New York, and they were saying apparently they've just changed or recently have changed distributor, and they're kind of expecting to see it be pushed around a little bit more. So
Good.
It's a good sign. Yeah.
Probably applies to Loch Lomond, which is my other one, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Hey, Mike. So I know we talk a lot about the Campbelltown whiskey profiles, like the Springbanks and the Kilkerrans and everything. But what is Glen Scotia's flavor profile, and is it something that really, matches the Campbelltown aesthetic, or is it kind of doing its own thing?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it is distinct from the Springbank side of things. Everybody talks about Campbelltown funk. I personally don't think that applies to Glen Scotia to the same degree, if at all.
I agree.
It's more Springbank funk. There's a definite kind of some of those kind of typical West Coast notes we always talk about it being sort of, there's a salinity to it, which I love. There's a nice textural thing. It's often quite oily and slightly viscous. It's not overpoweringly so. It varies obviously by the finish. And there is a slightly industrial thing going on sometimes, but I think
especially with the Victoriana.
Yeah. There is that, but there's a lot of variance. It's a spirit which takes the finishes really well, and they do a really, really good job with their spirit. They know their spirit really well.
The thing I've noticed is I've never had two Glen Scotias that are similar. Like, I've had some peated Glen Scotias, I've had, the ex-bourbon, I've had some, cask-influenced Glen Scotias, and they all kind of do their own thing. I feel like their spirit can be a bit of a chameleon almost, but it holds up. It holds up to all of these things really well. So I'm not saying that it's like a, neutral, a naked spirit, but it really holds up to having a bit of experimentation on it. Hey.
Yeah, I think, one of my favorites actually is the festival release from, I think it was last year, the 11-year-old white port finish.
Yeah,
I've heard
that's just amazing. And that actually sent me on a tear, and I picked up a handful of other festival releases they brought out over the last number of years. And God, it's bloody good. But to your point, it takes different finishes really, really well. But to me anyway, it still feels like a Glen Scotia.
Nice.
One of my favorite distilleries, no doubt.
To me, I've always got this white chocolate note at the back of Glen Scotias, especially unpeated ones. I think that's what ties it in together with me. For me,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I need to buy some more Scotia. Springbank, take a seat, guys. Go on the bench. I think I might need to buy some Glen Scotias.
I think with the talk from Mike, maybe they got some of their kahunas of their own.
Yeah, totally.
No doubt.
Chuck, a bottle from you.
So I don't have any more of this. I've cashed it out. But the one that, the way I approached this topic was like, of course, my traditional way, which was like overthinking it and sort of like decomposing it all together, like taking it apart and really thinking about it. And I was thinking like, well, who's overlooking what? Who's overlooking bottles? Is it me? Am I the one looking over a bottle? And I thought, okay, well, what am I? And then I thought, well, is it our discussion, our sort of like group, our peer group of folks, like us at Dramface, or
right?
I know. So then I was like, well, it's unlikely that any of us are genuinely overlooking that much, because part of being a writer at Dramface means you're always on the search and you're always willing to look under this rock or, go to this other liquor store and find either a Dusty or something interesting or another version of something that you would find like, another Glen Scotia that's you've never had before or something like that. And then I thought, well, what about the greater, I think what we're asking is like, what do we think, or at least what do I think the greater whiskey enthusiast community is overlooking, right? I think that's kind of the spirit of the question, right? And then I was like, wow, that's interesting. It's definitely not the newbies of the whiskey community, people who are just getting into this. They haven't looked over anything yet. They're on the beginning of a journey and they're willing to go anywhere and just buy anything you tell them to try out, right? Because it's all new and it's all fun. But us experienced folks that have, we're a little further down the road, and I thought, oh, that is so easy. And I thought, I've got it. I've totally figured this out. I've cracked the nut. I know exactly what whiskey we are leaving behind on the shelf every time we go to the store. And so I was like, this is a perfect whiskey because it's from a distillery we all know.
There you go.
It's from a distillery that we don't really have a lot of affection for. It's from a distillery it's readily available. They have their core range, of which we've all tried, but none of us love. But they did a re-release of something, and it kind of reminds me of what Roy loves about Jura's recently released, better produced, like enthusiast produced whiskey, right?
Right.
They're another brand that people love. It sells ubiquitously. We don't necessarily love Jura because it's watered down and it's colored and it's filtered and it doesn't present much to the enthusiasts, but they have that one new bottling that is supposed to be better than the rest. It's made for craft. And I was like, who did that before Jura did it? Except Glenlivet. And it's the 12 illicit still.
Illicit still.
Well said. That's a good pick.
Nice.
That is a good pick.
Yeah, when I go back to thinking about if I were to have a perma-shelf bottle, that would easily be it. It's the easily, like, most affordable, approachable, easily accessible, heavy sherried whiskey at craft enthusiast sort of spec, and fits it kind of ticks all the boxes, and is something that people
48%, if I remember correctly, ABV. Good call.
Yeah, like that.
Do you have it in your glass at the moment, Chuck?
No, I ran out. It would be another one that I would buy. I think it's like $45 locally.
Wow,
it's a no-brainer.
That's a good bottle. It is a good bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I love the rationale there. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's like a what is it? You can look into my mind and how it all works.
All the machinations.
We all kind of took this last minute. Chuck just wrote a mental thesis on Rob's.
Yeah,
he had a whole chalkboard with diagrams, Pythagorean theorem.
Yep, yarn, like strips of yarn connecting thumbtacks.
Exactly.
Wait a minute.
I was so sure, Chuck, you were going to go American. So, everyone else knew what you were talking about. I'm like, I'm sure Chuck has something American planned here.
I was convinced you were going to go on a Macallan because that's.
No.
I was thinking the same thing.
Macallan. Yeah,
Macallan, I think it's kind of. If they made something that had some more spec to it and it was craft focused, I could get behind that, sure. But they don't do that yet.
But the Macallan 12 is so smooth, Chuck. Far out.
It's so smooth you don't even notice you're drinking it. That means it must be good.
It must be so good.
Now, I was very tempted to say, you know what, if you want to think about a whiskey that is often overlooked, you could pick any American single malt. In the greater whiskey community, I don't think, it's sort of not. It's not well known by Americans. If Americans are going to go to the whiskey shop, they're going to buy a bourbon, right? Yeah. If they're going to stumble into buying an American single malt, it's because they've discovered it already, and they're going out of their way to go find it and buy it over the ubiquity of bourbon. And then if it's going to be the UK market we're talking about, I mean, surely they don't really take American single malts too seriously quite yet, because it's not even a legal thing yet, right? It's still it's still basically a brotherhood agreement of what the distillers all think American single malt should be. There is a framework in mind, but it's not ratified yet. Yeah. And so, as a complete category of whiskey, you could say something that is often overlooked would be American single malt.
Leave it to the Americans, just being the burr under everyone's saddle, effing it up.
I'd say Westwood's pretty popular here, though, Chuck. I feel like that stuff gets. Yeah, I don't know whether it's just because brand people have gotten in here pretty early, and also being Australia, we just have a hard on for anything American. We just want to be like you guys. So it is kind of like, this is this very special American style thing that we can flog for all of you.
But thank God you haven't gotten to Taco Bell. For your own self-preservation.
We got Five Guys recently, I think.
There you go.
Weird chains coming in, yeah.
Yeah.
Should be called Five Blokes out there, really, shouldn't it?
5 mates.
5 mates.
5 mates.
Yep.
I've seen a few Jack Daniels single malts floating around here. I haven't tried any of them, but I don't know. Are they any good? Do you know?
I have not had the Jack Daniel's single malt.
I have not
can't-
either.
I can't.
The one thing I would say for anybody who's keen to try an American single malt is pay attention to the spec, because they can succumb to the same sort of pitfalls of any whiskey maker, whether it's Scotch or whatever. They can be tempted by producing it at 40%. Now, they're not often going to chill filter anything, because that's just an extra apparatus that a craft distiller doesn't want to afford and spend money on. And it's sort of, it doesn't really add anything, because they're distilling in batch anyway. They're not like the giant, like the Jack Daniels could be very well chill filtered, who knows? But if I were to look at those bigger brands, I would just kind of watch for the typical cues. It's unlikely that they're colored, because again, it's an extra apparatus that they would have to buy. Someone running a small shop isn't going to bother with. So in a way, with American single malts, you can kind of get away with not having to care or worry about filtration or coloring. And the other thing is that American distillers use a lot of new virgin oak, so there's going to be a lot of color imported from the new wood anyway. Yeah. So it's kind of an unnecessary step. So if you're going to take a look at it, just look at the specs and think about it. Look at the price and think about that, and go, either, hey, this is actually a reasonable product at a reasonable price, and it looks like it's craft produced. Yeah, go for it. But if it looks like they're sort of cheating their way through some of the steps, then, and if it's too expensive, especially, then I would caution.
So before we get to Justin, your bottle that you've overlooked or think has been overlooked, for you, Justin and Cleon, what American single malts have you seen in your markets? Just curious.
Yeah, the Wests. So Westwood, Westland.
Westwood, yes, Westwood.
Yeah, is Balcones one?
Yep, Texas.
Yes.
That's in Texas.
Yeah,
But Balcones is not in my market. But Balcones is not in my market. But I do have a few bottles of Balcones. Friend. As I'm looking at my spreadsheet.
You've been hanging out with Cleon in back alleys, obviously.
There you go. So, Justin, bottle that you have.
Pressure's on, because Chuck has done such a good, presentation on his thoughts and all that, right? So again, right, it's the same thought process, right? Is it me neglecting those bottles, or is it the wider community, or is it this and that? I mentioned in the chat some time ago, a bottle that I've been neglecting was the Kalila 12, right?
Yep.
But I'm sure it's not been neglected by the vast majority of drinkers, right? So that's not the one I'm going to put up with. I'm gonna put up. Do you want a hot take, or do you want the?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Let's get
We're all about the hot takes.
All about the hot take. All right. This is gonna be very hot.
He's reaching.
Oh my god!
Oh!
Tyreek High just rolled.
I have just pulled out an Octomore 12.3. Okay, so let me explain myself.
You need to. You better explain yourself.
I think as soon as you rip that out, I'm like, I know exactly where Justin's going here. Exactly.
So this bottle obviously has been one that is not commonly purchased for a very obvious reason, right? It's pricey. But I do think that whiskey enthusiasts, with whiskey bottlers, whatever you call yourselves, you should have a bottle of this on your shelf. You're not going to rinse it over, 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to last a while. But as a reference point of a whiskey, I think it's worth having. Any Octomore, right? It doesn't have to be this one. This one I've got is a 12.3, right? It doesn't have to be this one. But I think just to have it on your shelf, to show people what it's like to be, to try a superly heavily peated a single malt, a whiskey, I think it's worth the effort. It's worth the extra bit of money.
I
So
reckon, Justin, you've definitely
yeah,
touched on something here because even 6 to 7 years ago, right? You go to a bar and people like us, the whiskey enthusiasts, there was always an Octomore at the bar. Someone had asked for an Octomore. Someone was pouring it, and now every time I go to my, those top whiskey bars that we have here in Melbourne, they very rarely get chosen. Like I do think that
yeah.
Octomore has fallen off the wagon for a lot of whiskey enthusiasts, except of course Justin, maybe Mike. Mike, you look like you have something to say.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of go with you down this path because I got some questions around Octomore. Well, I have one issue with Octomore for a start, which is why the hell do you put it in such a tall bottle?
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
course.
That's
exactly.
a fair question.
It is
And
probably
opaque
the
bottles
most.
as well. Some of the times.
It is the most awkward bottle to find storage for. It doesn't fit on the shelf 8 times out of 10. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can get over that, and if you want it badly enough, you'll find a home for it.
True.
You'll snuggle up in bed or with it or whatever you're going to do. But the other question for me is, what's the vision for this whiskey? What is this whiskey trying to be? And I'm not sure it's trying to be anything other the peatiest freaking whiskey you can possibly make. It seems to be the goal seems to be, yeah, let's be the peatiest whiskey. But so what?
Let's
I mean-
go another hot take. Octomore doesn't taste as peaty as some of
Yes.
the big.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
It
really
doesn't even
surprised.
do that. Really.
I was really
But-
surprised the first time I had an Octomore. I was expecting my balls to drop off. It was like, this is going to just have a physical effect on me and it's going to be mind-blowing. And I guess I'm going to like it because everybody thinks it's fantastic. I want to try this to know what it's going to be like. And it was kind of like,
I want to have my balls fall off.
well, there you go. Got it.
like those lizards where they get scared and their tails fall off.
That's the kind of thing. I wanted to go full wizard with the Octomore. Okay, this went south really fast. And it was okay. It was a peaty whiskey, but I kind of think that the ppm is more important than the product sometimes. I wasn't necessarily going to quite put it like that. It sounds a bit brutal. But I don't really get the sense that there's a vision beyond having the highest ppm. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me.
I will tell you that when my wife and I went to Isla in 22, we went to Bruichladdich and we did the tastings and whatever, and we're taking them out of casks. And to your point, Cleon, hot take, I was just thinking the same thing because I remember tasting the Octomore versus, a number of other expressions that they had. And I'm thinking, I can't pick the Octomore out because they're all the same peat level to me on my palate.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a me thing, but I kept going back to it and just it didn't make my balls.
Do you think if you guys had a blind, do you think does anybody here tonight think they could point it out in a blind between Ardbeg 10 or pick another Ardbeg?
Yeah. Octomore to me is
Charlotte.
very
It has a certain the flavor profile. I could pick out a Bruichladdich.
But not
I
because
reckon I
it's-
could even point it out in comparison to a Port Charlotte because to me, Octomore isn't very peaty. It's very, very petrochemical. I don't even know if this is the right descriptor. We need Tyree here to really break it down for us. But yeah, it is very distinct. But to me, it doesn't taste exactly like peat or smoke. There is this kind of almost other dimension to it that has a little bit more of a petrochemical sort of vibe. And I think because of that flavor profile, not all the Octomores work. Some Octomores work amazingly. Like some of the best things I've had actually have been Octomores. Like I've had, I think it was the 7.3 was incredible. There was that one in the red bottle, the Comus, I believe, that was incredible. I've had some really nice IB Octomores in red wine casks that have been really good. Actually, that's one more thing, and I'll stop ranting. Octomore takes to red wine casks probably the best out of any other spirit. But overall, as a range, I do agree with you, Rob and Mike, that it is a bit of a confusing expression because I don't think all of the styles that they do work. When it does work, it works really well. And when it doesn't work, I don't find myself going back to it. It's kind of, it is kind of high risk. It's a high risk spirit to work with.
I've picked up the 0.3 for a reason because I don't think I've had a bad 0.3. I've had disappointing 0.1s and 0.2s, but I think the 0.3s are quite on point. And back to the point where you think it's confusing at times. I think the youth, sometimes we don't realize the youth of this spirit. This was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Usually they're about
Yeah.
5 to 6 years old. We don't think of Octomore as being young. We only think of it as being PT,
Extra peaty. Yeah.
smoky,
Yeah.
powerful.
Let me ask you guys, do you think it's a mistake the way that they market it? Do you think that they're sort of overemphasizing the peat at the sake of maybe selling it in a better way, selling it as a whiskey in a better way?
No,
that's obviously
I think
true
it
for me.
needs that.
Right.
It needs that.
I- I'm- I'm not a marketing person, right? But I think the marketing is what brings it to the fore. If it wasn't for the marketing, it would just be any other whiskey. And,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, they're pushing the peat thing as hard as they can, and I mean, to the marketing point,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily a bad thing. And let me be clear: I'm not saying it's a bad whiskey. And there's some spectacular whiskey that comes out of that distillery, as we know. And you mentioned Port Charlotte.
Absolutely.
But to me, it's just, I don't know. I kind of want a whiskey where somebody actually gives the impression that they care about the spirit and they're putting in it. And what I get, and maybe it is the marketing, but all I've picked up really from my experience of it and seeing it in the market is what they really care about is a high peat level. And
but Mike,
yeah,
Mike, have you tried 2 or 3 Octomores side by side?
no, I've never done a side by side.
In my opinion, they do have intricacies between batches. So the
I
10.3,
agree,
for example,
yeah, the bottles are so different.
the 10.3, for example, it's like a really fruity beer kind of profile. It's different. It's like, yeah, it's not all the same. I wouldn't lump Octomores.
But what I
as
would
one
say,
thing.
Justin, is that all of their flavor profiles are extreme. You're like, I am
Yeah.
either drinking a balsamic glaze, or like you said, like a fruity beer, or like, like this petrochemical slush. Like, it's all very extreme flavor profiles. And obviously, for some people, it would work really well, but for others, maybe not, which is why we have some people who just don't get into them at all. I do
Yeah.
think that overall, though, amongst people like us, I don't know how well the range is doing per se. Like, I would really love to, get some numbers on whether it's still as popular as it was before. I think it was the whiskey range maybe 5-6 years ago, but
Yeah.
I feel like less and less I hear less about them. Like, I think people would rather spend that high amount of money on a well-aged bottle or a really nice indie rather than, getting those
Yeah.
ranges at this stage.
The variation
I mean-
in the flavor profile you're talking about, Justin, is actually really
Yeah.
interesting. That's been completely lost on me as somebody who hasn't already jumped on board, because it gets lost,
Yeah.
to me at least, and I think a bunch of other people, it gets lost in the noise about the strength
Yes.
of the heat, which is a
Yes,
shame.
it does.
That's
Yeah.
so true.
But
Because they
adding
can-
water definitely helps as well to that, because it's strong. It's 60-ish
Right.
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So would you guys say the
So
same thing about Black Arts? That it's the same sort of overlooked, forgotten Bruichladdich?
They're
Like
too
Octomore.
expensive, Chuck. They're so expensive now. They've
Yeah,
like
the Black
doubled
Art
in
is a way
price.
over.
I think there's a difference
And they don't
between.
have an age statement on them anymore, Chuck. Like, at least when they had an
Oh,
age
they do. They
statement,
do.
people do they?
They do.
Oh, okay, that's my bad.
Yeah.
What have
But
they
I think
changed in the because they've changed their nomenclature in some way, haven't they, Justin?
I'm not sure, but I'm aware of age statements in the Black Arts.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the nomenclature and stuff. Yeah.
I think there's a difference between being overlooked and just walking past.
Yeah.
Because if you see the price tag on a Black Arts, you're walking past it. It may be interesting. You're like, no, that's just a hard pass because I don't want to be financially raped. But versus, well, I'll give you, for example, my bottle. The first, I've got 2 here. One is a sherry and one is a peated. But this is like the exact opposite of that Black Arts mentality, and probably very much the opposite of talking about an Octomore or a Glen Scotia as the overlooked. I looked at this exercise and just being like, okay, what do I, when I had been in a place where I could walk through a brick and mortar, what were the things on the bottom shelf?
Yeah.
Or what were the things that people didn't, if they were in the single malt aisle, didn't gravitate towards? And the champion of that is the Naked Malt, and this bottle cost me $32. I don't remember anyone of my friends who were whiskey nerds or whiskey aficionados or anyone who likes single malt saying, "Oh, I went to the store and got myself some, a Naked Malt." And as a blended malt, it's really quite good. From what I understand, of what I've been able to look at, it's a blend of Glen Turret, Highland Park, and they talk about a spoonful of Macallan in it a little bit.
Right.
I mean, it's got a little sulfur. It's got a funk on it. I happen to like. I'm a sucker for the funk.
Yeah.
Glen
But for
Turret
third-
can do that, I find.
But for $32, it's squarely in the value proposition. I think people just overlook it. And I remember I picked this one up when I did my run to the border in South Carolina a couple months ago. And I said to myself, this is before this exercise was even hatched as an idea. I remember the Scotch for Dummies.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years back, they were talking about their different tiers, in this price range and this price range and this price range. What are the ones? And there was one of them where it was like the Naked Malt. That's my go-to. You can't beat it for the price and this and this. So I picked it up and it's good. I mean, it's not, getting a 22-year Linkwood IB. Don't get me wrong, but I like it. And the peated one,
That's a fun pick.
a Scarabus 10.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, people talk about this being Colila, and Scarabus has three different. There's their basic non-age statement. There's a cast strength one, and I like the 10. The 10 almost, Cleon, reminds me of a Moynia. I drink it and I'm like, it's close. I can see the resemblance. So I don't know if it's Colila or if it's Abuna. For the price, this cost me $60. Again, people walk past it all the time. So
What's the ABV on that?
this is the Scarabus 10 is
43?
46.
46?
Yeah.
Well, given how Diageo is playing, it sounds like maybe in the future it'll be easier to get Moynia Spirit than Kalila anyway. So it might more and more start to taste like a Bunnahaven. I did a bit of fact checking and I was wrong. Yeah, the Black Arts do have an age statement. What they've stopped doing, though, is giving it vintage years. Because the one Black Arts that I've owned was a birth year. It was a 92 Black Arts. But now they're not
92.
giving minimum.
Mike and I are just laughing. 92. Seriously?
Yeah. Aren't all those people still in school or something? That seems very young to me.
What I will say, though, was that Black Arts was absolute crack. It was Middle Eastern pastry shops galore. It was so bloody good. But, again, I don't really hear anyone talking about them really as much. Even in our, little chat groups and stuff, people very rarely bring them up. We bring up other, well-aged or, expensive whiskies, but Black Arts just doesn't come up as much. And I'm sure they still taste phenomenal, but maybe it's pricing, maybe it's marketing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I had
That's
one.
why I asked. Yeah.
That's a good question, though. Good question, Chuck.
Do I get a second dip on another bottle?
Go for it, Justin.
Yeah, by all means.
What does the spreadsheet tell you?
So the other one I want to bring up is the Nika.
Oh, yeah.
Coffee malt.
Nice.
Oh, that's a good call.
So again, right? I don't know if it's me that's neglecting this or if it's the wider community, but I think, especially Scotch drinkers, we don't really look at Japanese whiskies, and this is not a true Japanese whiskey. Right? It's got some beneficent. It's got some benevolence in it.
Yep.
But I think this is great. It's got this really nice chocolate note, easy drinking, 45%, and works well with ice as well. So
I killed mine over a summer, Justin. It didn't even last a single summer because I didn't use it a lot.
So
do you
the
guys
Nika,
like?
the Nika coffee malt, what's the ABV on that again?
45.
Okay.
Do you like the coffee grain as much as you like the coffee malt?
I like the coffee.
Does
malt.
anybody?
The malt
Yeah.
is better. The malt is
Malt,
better. The
yeah.
grain is
Yeah.
a bit too light on texture for me and a bit
Yeah.
too grassy.
But if you watch that whiskey tribe video comparing the two, they think the coffee malt is a bit too simple. They find a little bit more complexity, a little bit more spiciness in the grain.
Yeah, but those guys will never make a name for themselves. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, so
Mike.
this is my second pick.
You have a second pick.
I do have a second pick, yeah. And actually, I went out to buy this one because I realised I've had some Loch Lomond IBs
Yes.
I've really enjoyed, actually. I had a white port cask finished one not long ago. It was just spectacular. But I have literally overlooked Loch Lomond as OBs.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not have great distribution or haven't historically had great distribution here. I don't really remember seeing them on the shelves.
Here.
And I
Yeah,
gather
same.
that's changed. I gather there's a new distributor playing with them now. So I'm told the expectation is that will change. But it was on the shelf here when I went to the store in New York, and I thought, okay, let's look at that. I know, there's a handful of people, certainly within the Dramface writing community, who love Loch Lomond, talk very highly of it.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd give this a go. It's the Loch Lomond 12.
There it is.
46%. I opened this at about 5 o'clock today. It's now 8. So it's been open for a while. It says perfectly balanced on the label.
No way.
Yeah. Well, you might argue. Clearly, that's what I'm going to conclude. But it's actually kind of good. I mean, it's a little thin to start,
Right,
but you just give it a couple of seconds on the palate. It's like a little bit thin on the front palate. And bear in mind, I tend to live in the world of, as you guys do, cask strength and God knows what else.
Right.
But it actually comes alive mid-palate, and the finish is good. It's quite a long finish. Not super long, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very drinkable.
Yes.
And at $49 in the middle of New York City, where it's probably going to be about as expensive as it's going to be anywhere, that's a really good price point. And it's the sort of whiskey I think, oh yeah, I could easily keep this on the shelf and share this with people, no problem. And it'll be an easy go-to whiskey. But frankly, I'd never even had Loch Lomond in my head as an OB to go and explore until we went through this exercise.
That's a good call. Good
Yeah,
call.
it's easier to get IB Loch Lomond here in Australia than it is some of those OBs. You can get the standard stuff, like 12 and everything, but anything past that, it gets really, really tricky. Yeah. I have another, it's what you mentioned. I think, like what is a whiskey the market overlooks? And for me, I have my second one, which is Glencadam. Yeah, I've got a Glencadam 15, and it's not just the 15 I kind of want to talk about, because much like Mike was saying that the American market sort of overlooks the OB Loch Lomond range, I feel like the Aussie market completely overlooks Glencadam. We used to get the whole range a while back, but nowadays you get the 10 and that's about it. And
right.
It's just such a brilliant example of that clean refill bourbon distillate. And at that 46%, I think it drinks even higher than a 46%. It's just so flavorful and mouth-watering. Yeah, that's one that I think the market and maybe the importers sort of overlook. But as we've talked about many times before, people like us love Glencadam.
I think that it's a good call on your part, Cleon, and this is just my own view. The people who are in the UK, Glencadam is there. It's there. But outside of the UK, for us, and tell me if I'm wrong where you guys are, if Glencadam is something that when it's on the shelf, people don't usually gravitate toward it because they don't know it or they're not familiar with it. And it's a shame.
It's not the most attractive packaging as well. It's a pretty bland sort of range.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It doesn't look enticing in any way. It doesn't look interesting. It doesn't look rewarding. It doesn't look like $60 well spent.
But regardless of its look, it's seldom on the shelves for you to even assess its look. I mean, it is an infrequent sighting, Rob, for sure.
That's true.
We do get Glencadams over here, but strangely enough, we don't get the 10. We get the 15 a lot.
Really?
It's the reverse of the Australian market.
Yeah.
So now we know where the split goes. 15 goes to
yeah.
and goes to Cleon. Any other bottles that you guys brought to the fore haven't talked about yet? That you
I'm going to go on a limb and say I think Longrow was overlooked. I know because
Okay, the first time you thought too much about your response, and now I think, Chuck, you're just shooting some shit.
No, it's because it's overlooked. He wants to drink some long row. Is what he's
Yeah.
telling.
Yep. I mean, everybody talks about Springbank and everybody talks about Glen Scotia because Glen Scotia is actually, there's a lot of it. But people don't talk about Long Row, right?
I think it's
love
Hazelburn that
Long
no
Row.
one talks about. No one talks about Hazelburn, and I
Same
think the only ones that really come out that people even know about from a range point of view is the 10, and then occasionally, and they actually even haven't done one in a while, is an Oloroso, and that's the one Hazelburn bottle that I do have that is somewhat on life support. And it's kind of on life support because my wife used some of it to make a Christmas pudding, and she didn't know that
Oh
it
my
was one of my
gosh.
beloved Springbank bottles, and I only had one of them. So yeah, that really tested our marriage. But yeah, I think Hazelburn is one that really doesn't get much of a look at.
Yeah.
Out of the three, out of the Springbank Longrow and Hazelburn, I reckon the Hazelburn doesn't get. And look, that
I
could
agree
be
with
a
Cleon.
release point of view. Like, not a lot of it comes out. But yeah, that one really
Yeah.
is forgotten.
I can just see Mrs. Cleon like, you're gonna get another freaking IKEA. I'll show you what I'll fucking do with this whiskey.
She knows what this
Cleon,
is. She felt really bad. I did milk it a bit that day. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm still mad, baby. But really, I'm like, it's fine. At max, it would have been like 20 mils. It's all good.
Yeah, I was going to say the same about the Hazelburn relative to the long row, but I have heard it's really good for cooking with.
Well, it was last Christmas, so it's coming up to the 1-year anniversary of the incident.
Lock
was
the
gonna say-
cabinet, my friend. Lock the cabinet.
I was gonna say Cleon right now is rearranging all of his stuff, so all the good stuff's in the back again. And that's the way that's gonna go. All right.
I've got one more. I've got one more to cap it off, and this is out of left field. It's not whiskey.
Oh.
What is that?
It's a
Some rum?
Dolly's Barbados rum from Foursquare. Yeah.
Justin, I'm
So-
so with you.
So for me, I think it's important to just have something else in the cabinet instead of all whiskeys, and once in a while a rum does it for me.
Hell yeah.
That's it.
Good call.
If our boy Angus was here, he would definitely testify to that. I think
He
rum is
absolutely
so overlooked at the moment. I think it's gonna get more popular, especially
I think so.
as
Yeah.
whiskey kind of becomes a bit too ubiquitous almost, and rum might be a bit more of a distinct sort of stylish sort of thing to have.
But I think brandy will come before rum. To be honest,
Really?
Oh, you reckon?
I
I
think
thought
so.
the other way around.
Yeah, totally. I would say brandy, I think, is still overlooked altogether as a whole category of.
but that's
distilled
where the
spirits.
value is. That's why that's where the value is. Brandy as a whole, right? Not just cognac, not just armagnac, just brandy as a whole.
True, because some rums are pretty expensive. Like, if you want to get like one of those high ester monsters, they can be a bit more pricey than your standard rum. as well.
Speaking of high ester monsters, you know that Dramface article that Tyree put out talking about Hamden rums. I
Oh
bought
yeah.
a bottle of that untouched.
Tyree has his magic.
Oh, yeah.
He does.
He absolutely does. All right, gentlemen. We're going to roll into, because I'm looking at the clock, the I Am a Distillery. But before doing so, I want to thank the listeners. Mike and I were talking last night that we walk around, and not that we're advertising who we are and what we're doing, but we hear certain chatter about the Dramface podcast, and they even talk about the Colonials podcast, those wee little ones that we are. Great feedback, and so thank you to the listeners who actually give us the feedback. We appreciate it tremendously.
Here. Yep.
There
Cheers
is
to you all.
also, I would be remiss if we did not remind the listeners that there still is on the website, the Dramaphone. So if you have any questions for us, if you have any topics for us to cover, please go to the website and use the Dramaphone. We do check it, and happy to answer, respond, do whatever. Now, rolling into the I Am a Distillery.
Finally, I get to participate.
Justin, he's just like rolling up his sleeves and
Oh, he needs to win here. There's a
I'll
look of
tell you, this is
gritty determination on his face.
serious competition going on. All right.
The man has a spreadsheet. He's gonna be a new competitor on the scene.
All right. Love it. All right. You guys ready and buckled in?
Buckled up.
Yep.
All right. First one. Now, normally I would start off with I Am a Distillery and leave it at that. But I'm going to actually make it the first one into an actual something with it. So, the I Am a Distillery starts with I am a distillery that presently does not welcome any visitors.
Okay.
No one jumping at it.
Oh, I'm ready. I already got one in mind.
All right. Number 9. I am a distillery that was built over 200 years ago. Any
I'm
takers?
not so sure now.
Number 8. I am a distillery that generates 4.3 million liters per annum. Not insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
Number 7. I'm a distillery and I create whiskey as a component of Doers and Lawsons.
So say that again.
I'm a distillery that creates whiskey to be a component of Doers and Lawsons. Any takers?
Awesome.
I see.
I'm going to go for this, which I may regret. Octomore.
Okay, shot is shot. Well done. Number 6. I have, as a distillery, a 12.9 ton full lauter mash tun. There are 6 wooden washbacks and 2 made of stainless steel, all with a fermentation time of 68 hours and 2 pairs of large stills. Come on. Number 5. I'm a distillery that produced a 10-year-old Flora and Fauna that was launched in United Distillers Flora and Fauna series.
No.
Oh, Mike.
Isn't that?
Yes.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
No?
I know.
All
Okay, I'll just go for it.
Go ahead.
The Macallan.
Shot his shot. There we go. Number 4.
4.3 million per annum for Macallan.
Number 4. My whiskey was primarily used for blends until 2014, when my owner, Doers, announced a then 5-strong range of single malts.
5-strong range of single malt. So that means is okay. Never mind. Okay, keep going.
Number 3.
Shoot.
My present core range consists of a 12-year-old Oloroso finish, an 18-year-old Palo Cortado finish.
Royal Brocla.
Oh, I was gonna say fuck.
I'm going to keep going. 20-year-old finished in PX Oloroso and Palo Cortado, and a 25-year-old PX finish. And Justin, you shot the shot.
Damn it!
I shot my shot.
Number
I
2.
really fucked that up.
I'm so annoyed, right? Because for the first time, I actually had an idea of what it was, and Justin sniped it out of me.
Look, I still got. We got two more hints here. Number 2. I am located close to Carter Castle and the Culloden battlefield in the Highland region. And number 1, before I get to the name, because this is a chock full I Am a Distillery. I'm not cheating anyone with. I'm putting a full 10 questions here.
You do.
Or hints. Let's see the faces here when I say number 1. I'm a distillery that was granted a royal warrant by King William IV, with Queen Victoria renewing the royal warrant 5 years later. I am
Royal
Royal Brackley.
Royal Rotnagar.
Royal Northnagar, yeah.
I'm never
Justin, your first time as a colonial on the podcast, and you snipe it.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Well
Well
done.
done.
Well done.
That was
Here's to you.
that was a
Royal
really good
Distillery.
one, Rob. That was really good.
All
The
right.
core range did it. The core range was the hint.
Well done.
As soon as
I
you
thought
said
it was-
doers, as soon as you said doers, there was only 3 it could be.
Well, I was going to try to throw everyone off because they had the floor in front that was
Yeah.
done by United Distillers,
Yeah.
but then they were bought out later by Duracell.
I was initially
Nicely
I was
done.
like Aberfeldy or Brackler, and then it sounded like Brackler.
Nice
That was
one.
a good one.
Yeah.
Did it?
Well done.
Very nice.
You're on the hook, Justin.
Yeah, that's right. Justin, next time you're on, you're going to be doing I Am a Distillery.
Sure. Happy to do it.
Well done. Gentlemen, thank you so much. As always, it's always great hanging out with you guys. I raise a glass to you guys. And I wish you a very good evening / morning. We'll get into more tasting notes about Longmorn Red in a little bit.
We will.
And until then, cheers, fellas.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Take care.
My glass is empty, so I need another long pour.
Now I need to get ready for work.
I'm gonna go get some whiskey. Are you guys still staying on for a bit more?
Oh, yeah.
We'll join you in breakfast with us.
You have to go to work now?
I have to go to work in 2 hours. 2 hours.
What does it mean? Does that mean you gotta like get dressed and changed? You gotta go to like a suit and catch a train?
I don't mean a suit, but I need to get. Well, I'm dressed up top. I'm not dressed below. The classic news anchor
Yeah.
attire.
Yeah.